This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke, and joining me today is Eddie Jones. Ewen McKenzie is busy getting ready for Christmas. Dr. Doolittle looking after all of his animals, and he's got family coming, so he won't be joining us today, but Eddie Jones is with us today. And Eddie, League One underway in Japan. What happened over the first weekend? And where were you? What were you looking for? And tell us the story of the first weekend up in Japan.
I thought we might have seen Big Link in a Christmas suit today. That'll get a few TikToks, wouldn't it?
Maybe he's dressing up. Maybe he's getting ready for that. Maybe that's what he's doing.
He's getting ready now.
But,
first round, in Japan they have a long pre-season, so 3 or 4 months to prepare, so teams are fit. The national team players obviously came back a couple of weeks ago. So some of them played, some of them didn't play, depending on their team's situation. It's a big time for rugby in Japan. University, I don't know what it is, best 16 were played also. So on Saturday, went and watched my old club Suntory play Ricoh. Suntory's captained by Sam Kane and Ricoh's captained by TJ Perenara. They had a good crowd in the middle of Tokyo, Chichibu, about just under 20,000, I think. It wasn't a great game, but it was okay. Suntory got home. I think both teams would be pretty disappointed by their performance, really. You know, none of them played with a lot of conviction or fluidity or it just looked like they were trying to play to a pattern, and the players were more about trying to get it right than playing with a lot of conviction. So anyway, that was Saturday. Then Sunday, the two powerhouses of the last 10, or particularly the last 5 years, Toshiba and Panasonic played out at Ajinomoto, which is west of Tokyo, about 20 Ks. Must have been just under 40,000 there, so a really good crowd. Toshiba missing Warner Dearns, who's off to the Hurricanes. Their hooker Harada, who's off to Moana Pacifica. And Leitch, unfortunately, hasn't recovered from his calf injury that he endured against, I think it was Ireland, in the last bit of the game. And they got well and truly walloped, mate. 46-0 by Panasonic, who were playing. Panasonic didn't do as well as they would have liked last year, missed out on the final. Had a newish team, missing a few of their national team players, but played with a lot of purpose, took all their penalty goals, which is unusual in Japan. The 10 must have kicked 5 or 6 penalty goals. I didn't see the final count, but they won easily, and it was hard to see any area that Toshiba won in. And then the university finals, I went out and watched on Sunday, so it was a busy day. Toyo and Takeo, which won't mean much to listeners. But Takeo, had won, I think, something like 9 championships in a row. And this year they're a little bit off the pace and they struggle to get home. But it all starts again next week, where it's best 8 in the university and second round of League One.
They're big crowds.
20,000 good crowds, mate.
Chichibunomiya, that's a big crowd in that part of Tokyo, and 40,000 outside of town. So are we seeing sort of a lift? Are we seeing like a generational shift in the interest in the game?
Well, it's really interesting because, the crowds in the domestic league here are probably more so than in other country, probably very similar to Australia, where it's linked to the success of the national team. You've got a lot of people who follow rugby, not ardent fans, but if the national team's doing well, they tend to get on the back of it and they want to watch rugby. And, we haven't had flourishing success. But I think winning the game against Georgia gives rugby a pretty positive air here. And the League One teams are doing a lot of work in marketing their games, because now they're still generally funded by the big corporations, but they're now more standalone. Toshiba particularly are a standalone company, so they need to make money through gate tickets and through sponsorship. So they work really hard to get a big crowd there, and they obviously got there. Like, I caught the train out there, it was like peak time. It was like peak time. This bloke came up to me, he said, are you allowed to catch the train, are you? A Japanese bloke. And I said, well, I'm just normal, mate. I'm just doing my best like you are. And I'll tell you, I was doing my best, mate. Hanging onto the rail, it was crammed, absolutely packed. And this is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's because it wouldn't have been that many years ago that there would have been, what, 5 to 7,000 attending these types of games?
8,000, mate. You know, Suntory, Ricoh. Suntory's got good fellowship. Ricoh, not so much. You'd probably get 8,000. Toshiba, Pana, you'd probably be thinking 15,000 there at Ajinomoto. So, you know, they're almost double the crowds. Or, in fact, they are double the crowd, which is a really good sign.
Yeah. Great sign. Oh, that's fantastic news. And,
what wasn't a good sign, mate, was the TMO. The TMO's come into Japan like COVID, mate. Like, it's the same thing. The disease is caught. Like, seriously, I was watching one game on television. I think it was the Yamaha Canon game, and there must have been nearly every decision went to the TMO. It's this obsession with getting things right now. And it really can be straightened out pretty quickly. But there's this obsession, and then we've got these glancing blows on heads, you know, where players are doing everything right to make a tackle and the height drops at the last moment. And we understand the safety of the player. But there's got to be some common sense. Otherwise, we'll be checking every collision in the game. You know, and the height of the players, if you look how increasingly more dynamic the game's becoming. You know, the body positions of the players, the low body height, the driving positions. You know, there's going to be more collisions of the head, and they're not. You know, if we look at every decision with a microscope, the game's going to become more and more like gridiron. Like, I'm waiting for the day where you got a white flag. You know, the coach is going to be able to be in the technical area. He can throw a white flag on. No, that's not the right decision. Let's go back and check that. Captain's challenge.
So would that be a decision of the Japan Rugby Union to instruct their referees to adjudicate in a particular way, and that these are the standards that we're now looking at? Or how do you think that it's come into the game there? And in last season in Japan, was it adjudicated the same way?
Yeah, probably I'm more sensitive to it now as well. Like, when you go and watch a game, when you're only watching a game, you feel it more because you're sitting there and you're waiting for the game to get going, and all you're watching is a referee go like this. Look, I think generally the standard's set by World Rugby, and then countries make a decision on whether they follow it or not. And, you know, Japanese to a large extent are reasonably obedient people, and they want to do the right thing. And the referees want to get up the tree. If you want to get up the tree, don't get up the tree by disobeying the head principle. Yeah, you've got to follow what's being set in stone by the top.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, listen, interestingly, we're having a chat over the weekend about something else, and one of the constant themes through Rugby Unity this year has been our reflection on the South African team and the excellence in their performance and the way that they've gone about building their particular squad and their involvement of their senior players. You told me a great story over the weekend about a meeting with Jesse Kriel, the South African centre. Can you share that with the audience?
Oh, the thing that always struck me, and I was lucky enough to be coached by Bob Dwyer, and he always said to me, he said, the best players are the best coaches. So he said, when you start coaching, one of the things you've got to do, mate, is go out and meet the best players all the time. So after the South African game, I'd known Jesse, but we never really spoke. After the South African game, I said, let's catch up in Tokyo when you're back, mate. So we organised to have a coffee and spent 2 hours just talking about, you know, what South Africa are doing, not in any detail, but along the lines of what they're doing well. He asked me a few questions about what we're doing, and it was just a really good chat about rugby. And he's taken over as captain of Cannon this year, so he's taken on the responsibilities of 7th year in Japan. He's one of those guys that's come here and he gives it absolutely 100%. He plays every test like he's playing for the Springboks. And it's great to see those blokes. And you think about his World Cup record. 2015, he was in that Springbok side that got beaten by Japan. He's won the next 2 World Cups. And you can see he's just doing everything he can to be the best player he can be for the next World Cup. You know, there's no idea about going there and just going the World Cup. It's going the World Cup and win. And I think that's the essence of what I picked up about the Springboks at the moment. Everything they do is about winning, and they know what they're good at. They know what areas they can potentially improve in, and they're so focused and diligent about it. And it's when you got a team really humming that, you know, you hear that from the players. It's a really good sign.
Yeah, it's interesting you told me the story also that when you did get back to your computer, there was a summary that Jesse had sent through. You know, this is what he'd heard, this is what he'd seen, and that was his view reflecting back to you what that what the conversation was about. So again, another suggestion of this pursuit of excellence, this attention to detail. It's super impressive, isn't it? And there you go. If you've got those types of attitude through multiple people in the team, and that's the standard, well, clearly you're going to improve and you're going to be as good as they are.
Yeah, very impressive young man, mate. And I think, when you've got the players taking on that responsibility within the team, you know you've got a team going well. Coaches are very important, and Rusty's doing a great job there. When you got people like Jesse Kriel, probably De Jager, Malcolm Marks, Delende, they're all at it. Then you've got these young guys coming in with no fear, Willemson, Sasha, and then you got Cheslin Kolbe. Again, Cheslin Kolbe plays on Saturday. Like, he's by far the most enthusiastic player for Suntory, by a mile, by an absolute mile. If you came from Mars, Pemby, and arrived in Tokyo on Saturday, you go to the game and you're thinking, this guy's on a different planet. And why? Like, he's just finished, a hard tour. That, those November tours are hard because you're in heavy winter. You're training on generally not great fields. You're travelling every week. And he comes back. He's the guy that chases kicks the hardest. He's the guy that gets back the hardest for kick return. Like, his enthusiasm for the game. It always struck me, one of the things you always want to know about players. I remember Alex Ferguson talking about it. You want to know players that love the game, because if they love the game, they want to get better. They want to keep getting better because they want to keep playing the game. And such a simple essence, but they're the players you really want in your team. They absolutely love it.
Yeah, very good. Okay, well, plenty to look forward to up there in Japan. And as we do discuss over the next little while, bring some more attention to it. But those crowd numbers, that's fantastic. I'm delighted that rugby is doing so well and that the national team is having such an impact. Actually, just before we push on from that, when you did get back there... I don't know whether
we can take any credit for it, mate, but... I think it's
I was just wondering though.
Yeah.
But there was a very big, and we discussed it on Rugby Unity previously after I attended the match up in Tokyo. I've not been to a press conference where there were more journalists and camera crews other than at World Cups. So obviously there's a huge interest in the national team, and there certainly was at that day when the Japan played Australia in Tokyo. But how was the general assessment? What did that media crowd, what was the sort of summation of their views of Japan's November tour or November fixtures, starting with Australia, finishing with Georgia?
Well, I don't read it, mate. So I'm lucky enough not to read it. I'm lucky enough not to hear it.
You probably can't read it.
No,
but people, I suppose the vibe would be there, though. Like, you get some sort of sense of it.
Well, Japanese press, like, the thing I picked up about the press in recent times, now they're runners for social media. Like, they used to make the news themselves, and now all they are is basically runners for social media, where they want to grab, like, you talk about it, mate, chats that we've had. When you've got something that's noteworthy on TikTok, you get a lot of followers, right? And it's good for good for the business. And I reckon most of the print journalists now and most who are most of the journalists who come to press conference, not entirely obviously, are now runners for social media. They just want something that they can put on social media that gets them followers, that shows to their employees, they're worthy of keeping on. And press conferences to me have morphed into that more and more. There always used to be a bit of that, but I think there's been a decided change. So one of the big things at the press conference we had was about, why aren't you picking senior players, right? So I said to them, well, because they keep asking me this question, and it annoys the hell out of me for some reason, because there's only 4 players left from the last World Cup. One of them made himself unavailable. 2 of them were injured, and one of them, hasn't got out of the stable yet. So, but this because they want a headline, and that becomes a headline that I got annoyed about that question, because I said to them, well, name them for me, guys. Name them for me. And, of course, then if I say that, I'm being aggressive. Yeah. So that gives them headlines.
Yeah. Fair enough. Hey, listen, just one more thing before we do get to the questions from the third voice, and a big thank you to everyone who has filled out the survey, which is in the link below. So jump on there, please. Give us your feedback, because that will help us to improve the program. But you also caught up with Michael Leitch last week for a conversation. I think you left feeling 10 feet tall again. Every time you have a conversation, any sort of engagement with Michael Leitch, he is the ultimate coach's player in many ways.
Yeah, it's probably one of the things I've enjoyed most coming back to Japan, renewing relationship with him, because he's such a humble, dedicated guy. Like at 37, he's gone out, he's made his own tackle pads to improve his tackling. Actually gone to a company and got them made, right? He's always looking for the edge. He's looking how he can get better. And the influence he had when he came back on the tour was absolutely outstanding. Just, he's not a guy that goes around telling younger players what to do. He just does it and expects them to follow. He's so determined to be the best player. He doesn't want any guarantee on selection. He just wants to see if he can keep getting better. And, you just want those players to keep playing the game at a high level.
We're not talking rugby, we're building it. Rugby Unity.
So when you say he wants to just keep getting better, what's the detail that he's asking about? What are the things that he's seeking to improve in? Is it getting off the floor faster? Is it sort of, getting back to take those kicks that he obviously had that role for the box kicks? What are some of the things that he's talking to you about?
Well, as you get older, generally for forwards particularly, what drops off the most is their ability to carry, and particularly in today's game, where it's such an important area, they lose that little bit of bite in their legs, that punch in their legs. And what he wants to get back is that punch in his legs on his carry, and all the other areas he wants to keep making sure he doesn't drop off at all. Because he's always been a great defensive player. Yeah. Defends with his heart and soul, got good technique. All the attributes you want of a good back rower.
Very good. Okay, so to the questions from the third voice, and again, just another encouragement, if you could, jump onto that survey, fill it out. Well, it'll take you a couple of minutes, and it does help us to get more, basically understand more about you and what you want out of this program, and again, helps us to get some of these great questions. So to jump through the questions here, the first one is from Kent Lee. Eddie Jones, your thoughts on the decline of Australian rugby from a solid third most popular to a fringe sport? The media coverage is almost non-existent. Why do you think over the last however many years, probably let's say it's 20 years, that the game has drifted?
Well, it's 100% linked to the success of the Wallabies. As we spoke about before, Australia is a small rugby country. But it hasn't been small in terms of its world success, and that's been based on having a good playing population where we've got plenty of good athletes in Australia, but like most other countries, we're competing for them. If you look at any other country, apart from maybe South Africa, where all the best athletes tend to go to rugby, you're competing for the best athletes. And if Wallabies aren't successful, then kids then make a decision, well, maybe I'll play rugby league or AFL or basketball. And unless you're really diligent in terms of your recruitment and development of those players, which I don't think Australia has, which I've spoken about on a number of times before, you don't get the talent coming through. And that becomes a problem at the top level. You look at Joseph Suiali, right? Admittedly, maybe at the end of the season he dropped off a bit. But when he came in the side, he looked head and shoulders above everyone else. Now, he's just a kid that went to high school, but the big difference is that then he went to the Roosters. Cite another example, Mark, what's his name? Noah.
Nongawitawase.
Yeah, he was a good performer at the World Cup in 2023, but could generally only play for 20, 25 minutes. Gone to East, has turned himself into one of the best rugby league players in Australia. And I think he played for the Kangaroos, didn't he? Right? So
he did. Yeah.
Why are those two guys are outstanding compared to the rest of the Australian rugby population? It gets down to how we're developing the players. And if we can get back to really, and I'm saying we, and it's not me, but I still feel, part of it, mate.
Of course you are.
That if we can get back to really being diligent about the recruitment and development of young players, and it's going to take time now, to bring those players through. But there's a talent there in Australia. There's no doubt about it. But it's going to take administrators who look further than today. They've got to look over the horizon. They've got to invest in almost a 10-year project, make Australia great. Like, they need Donald Trump to come in there for 10 years, turn the place around, be committed to a long-term vision. In 10 years, Australia can be back in the top 3 in the world. I've got no doubt about it. Yeah. But it's going to take money and it's going to take time.
All right. Now, Kent also does add, rugby, the game and the people in it made a little boy who did not speak English feel that he belonged. If we can win the World Cup again, I'll die happy. Well, that's wonderful to hear from you, Kent, that the game did make you feel the belonging, because that is, a key value of the sport, solidarity. So, Stormer Nick asks, do you guys think World Rugby needs a makeover to be more transparent, more open, more committed, and more accessible to the fans? Eddie Jones.
Well, it needs to be faster, mate. The thing it needs to do is make decisions faster. So whatever structure they've got in place doesn't aid itself to speed in decision making, and they need to make quicker decisions. They need to evaluate how the game is very quickly and make decisions to improve the game. And that's the thing. We sort of lag behind there. The problems happen. We let them happen. We almost endure it for a period of time until again the media becomes so hard that they're forced into making a decision.
No, I totally agree with that. I think, and we are going to be exploring that with Brett Robinson. So we look forward to that discussion coming up on Rugby Unity prior to Christmas. So look forward to that. Storm and Nick. Daniel Bamba. Daniel, thank you for your question. And it's a question to you, Eddie Jones. How do the positions of Japan head coach compared to England and Australia when liaising with their respective domestic competitions? What were the strengths and weaknesses of each in your view?
They're all pretty much the same, mate. England have changed now because they've got central contracting, which maybe the agitation we had during the time we were there helped a little bit in that. But Australia and Japan are completely the same. You've got independent domestic competitions, independent teams to a large extent, and it's all based on relationship, how you can encourage each of those clubs, teams, provinces to work together to improve the players. So England was the same before they got central contracting. Now I think they're in a much better position to really give every player a 12-month program where they can keep getting better, because that's the key, mate. That's the key. For players, particularly the best players in the world, all have two teams to serve. They have their national team and their club team, and you want them on a program where there's only one program to improve them as a player. And so when the national team and the provincial or the club team can work together, you look at South Africa as an example. Again, they've got no formal relationships with the teams in Japan, but they work through relationships to ensure the players are in their best condition.
Yep. Okay, Noel Frost asks, which rugby laws do you feel need to be either removed or drastically modified to make the game more appealing?
Well, I think the game's pretty appealing, mate, Noel. I've spoken about it. I'd just go TMO, absolute red card, come in, goal line decisions, 3 phases come in, all the rest, let's get the referees better and back the referees to get it right. Second one, it's an interesting one. I reckon we've got when a ruck's been formed, we've got to not allow people to then enter the ruck. So it'll speed up the box kick, because now the ball's won, it sits at the back, and then 2 or 3 players are allowed to increase the length of the ruck to allow the box kick. I reckon if we took that away, the ball's won, referee says use it, then you can't join that ruck. That'll be the second thing. Third part, I think the game's pretty good apart from that, mate. Wouldn't have a third one.
Yep.
Just 2.
Very good. Okay. Thanks, Noel, and much appreciated. And again, just a reminder to everyone out there, won't take you long. Jump onto the survey, fill it out. Let us know a little bit more about you, but also let us know your questions and comments. So Amit Prasad asks, how can we get the global game more aligned together in terms of the calendar? French Rugby Union is probably the strongest and most entertaining league in the world. It's on Premier Sports in UK, which nobody has. How can we get some games broadcast free to sell the product? So to the first question, Eddie Jones, the alignment piece around the calendar.
Well, they've been trying to do that ever since the game turned professional. What it's going to take is the Northern Hemisphere to move their season and the Southern Hemisphere to move their season. And at the moment, not even the tsunami would get them to move their season. So I don't hold any hope for that. And there's reasons for that, and quite rightly reasons. If you look at the Northern Hemisphere, the Six Nations is one of the strongest international competitions, if not the strongest international competition. And the timing for that's set in stone, and it's almost like a ritual, a rugby ritual. So why would you want to change that? And then the domestic seasons are built around that. And similarly, Southern Hemisphere for Australia, particularly to change their season, they clash with cricket, And so there's all these difficulties, and it's not an easy solution at all. It sounds really, really easy, but it's very difficult. And I think, we just got to battle through. But what we need to come to is very set international windows, which we're probably going to get in the Nations Cup. That those windows, no other rugby should be played at that time in the countries where the Nations Cups are played.
No, I agree with that. And people who listen to this would know how enthusiastic I am around the Nations Championship for next year. I think it's going to add another dimension to rugby. And again, if we can get incremental improvement along the way, there's not going to be a whole lot of big bang available to us, particularly in a game that's as complex and diverse in terms of its stakeholder groups. And as Eddie said, changing those calendars is going to be difficult, but where are those incremental improvements? And just in terms of getting games broadcast for free, unfortunately, the money in professional rugby, a lot of it comes from broadcasters, and you do have to go often to the highest bidder. And again, this fragmentation of rights is happening all over the place. If you look at the NFL in the States, at the NBA in the States, you have to watch it on 4 or 5 different providers as well. So I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon, Amit. So you're going to have to keep paying up for Premier Sports in the UK if you do want to watch the French rugby. So M. Dempster says, do you think that rugby is improving year on year, or was there an era that it was better quality for the viewer? Eddie Jones, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think some games are harder to watch now, if that makes sense. Like before, we used to see these mismatch of games where nothing looked too tidy. And I think now you can watch a game and it can be really tidy and really boring, really boring. You know, where everyone's playing the same way. There's no standout players. They're relying on a contested kick to get ahead because the defences are so strong now. You know, you think about, just thinking that Panasonic Toshiba game in Japan, for a team to get 0 is almost unheard of. And it showed Panasonic how good their defence was. And at the same token, Toshiba's attack was very 1-3-3-1, very orthodox. And because Mo'unga was struggling to get any sort of go-forward ball, he had no room to move in. You basically didn't see him have an influence in the game, which is unusual, particularly up here, because Mo'unga's, he's like the best player that Japan's ever seen for a long time. So I think we still get those games that are difficult to watch, but I think the general standard of the game has improved immensely. You just have a look at the breakdown skills of players now. Across the board from 1 to 15, it's outstanding. Catch pass skills pretty good, given the line speed we now have. Tackling skills is good. The line out skills, scrum skills, you can't argue with those. High ball catching. I think the game's pretty good, mate. There's been periods where the game's been probably a little bit more attractive right at the top. And if you look at that early 2000 where, the game had that real continuity, there was some really good rugby there. But now we've morphed into a contest phase, which is important, that we get the balance right between contest and continuity. And it's hard in the contest area now. And I think because of that, it's such a good spectacle. Yeah, I love it. Right. Absolutely love it.
A final question from Hendrik Langley. Why did the Aussies appoint Joe Schmidt? Australia spends a lot of money on the development of sport. Various teams have won World Cups. Wasn't there any coach that showed brilliance in coaching the Wallabies?
No, I'm probably not the person
to ask. Langley, but I think
maybe you can answer that. No. Well, firstly, Joe's a great coach.
I think they've, Yeah, I was going to say Joe Schmidt's it's an excellent coach. So,
but I think it does underline
when he was available to be appointed.
But I think it does underline the issue in Australian rugby. We've stopped because of the precarious financial position of Australian rugby. We stopped spending money on development of young players, development of coaches, and it's such an important area. If you particularly in Australia where there's not great competition for places, for coaches, because there's so few teams. You look at the NRL, they're consistently producing young coaches because of the competition they have. What have they got? 17 teams. To remain an NRL coach, you've got to be pretty good. Got to be very good because the competition's so high. So Australia doesn't have that competitive stress in rugby. And so you've got to develop, and development costs money. One thing that development does is costs money, and it hasn't been prioritised in Australian rugby at all. We've had some great people involved in the education of coaches previously, and Australia needs to rejig that.
Yeah, Very good. All right, Hendrik, there is your answer. Now, there are some other comments from Hitchhiker's Pie, Matthew Murray, Cobus Deploy. Gentlemen, we will come to you at another time because we've got to get Eddie Jones back to his job coaching Japan. But just remember, your voice is crucial in shaping the future of rugby, so keep the comments and the questions and the suggestions coming. And if you want a chance to have your question answered by rugby legends like Eddie Jones or Ewen McKenzie, click the link in the bio and fill out the survey. Please also follow us on TikTok, Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our Substack for exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights and full podcast access. And it is ad-free, and you can access that via the QR code on the screen or click the link in the show notes. Eddie Jones, thank you so much for speaking to us today. We'll be back later in the week with another program. But please, people, for the moment, be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.